What are you scrolling through? Are you scrolling your life away?
And we definitely are.
If you are going to scroll your life away, make sure Kat and Tim appear somewhere in there.
I'm part of it. To be honest, I haven't been on the feed since like December, which I think is really good, to have that break and get some perspective, because I actually look at the content a bit different, I think, now.
So staying away from the feed,
Mm-hmm.
you've seen some positive outcome from that. What is the positive outcome?
I just think the feed, when you're looking at the feed, you're looking at social, or you're looking at marketing or your professional life, it can be all encompassing, and you forget, right, that it's really about our conversation earlier this week is about balance. So if you're always in there, and you talk about the bubble all the time, you get stuck in this bubble, and it kind of becomes a bit noisy. But I think when you focus, when you have time to reflect and you focus on the balance between, your personal life and professional life, you look at the content differently. I've noticed I've looked at it differently, and I can feel like, not that I'm less excited or more jaded or anything, but for me, and because I've started, and I've changed context in terms of my marketing role and what I do. It's really like there's just so much noise. That's what I've noticed. I don't know about you.
Yeah, so taking a break from the feed, has that
Mm,
served as like a reset for you because
yeah,
you're in a new role and you're having to think differently about
yeah, yeah. And
your
I think,
messaging?
yeah, messaging. And I think at the end of the day, and it just goes all back to, like, basics and the foundation of marketing. Um, and because everything's so digitally oriented, there's so many tactics and platforms and algorithms and things like that people specialize in that, but they don't necessarily have the marketing basics. And I think that's but not funny, but that's what makes, like, the vertical really unique. And you see people now saying, yes, you can, like, really, I've seen a few posts saying these are all tactics. Well, what's the actual basics of it? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So that's what I've kind of gotten out of that break. Also,
Yes.
just to, like, not take things too seriously.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed is that if you work closely, in my case, with a large client and you become very much engaged in whatever their messaging is to the market. Like I've noticed over the break, because there was a big technology show in January, and a lot of the big companies, I don't know if they're aware of this, but they have very similar messaging. So what you
Mm,
think might be a unique proposition, you then look outside the bubble to what competitors are saying, and the messaging is very similar. So I think that's going to be a challenge for people in 2024, because how do you stand out if everyone's saying we've got this thing now? Now it comes with AI, or now it has cherry flavored AI or lemon scented AI. Someone has lemon scented AI, someone has cinnamon infused AI. Like, it's very similar messaging, and
Yes, I agree.
yeah,
But I mean, I've actually even seen that for myself in health tech. Like, they're all solving a very similar issue. So it's, ensuring that patients can get access to the best possible care. And the technology is at the basis of it is trying to take away the manual aspect of the healthcare system, which is obviously taking up, in a system that's already scarce of um, time and efficiency, and they still have, paper-based models. Like, the tech is, all parts of the tech are trying to tackle the same problem. So I do still see that same issue around unique brand messaging. So, but I also think as part of that, it's maybe the experience or how you, I don't know, just with, I don't know, in terms of like technology, right? They're just trying to be the coolest, the slickest, the just attention grabbing. Whereas I think when you're looking somewhere like healthcare, it's really about simplicity of the messaging. Do you know what I mean? That it's not about being like the most up to date or so yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. I just feel like they're regardless of the vertical you're in, whether it's tech or well actually healthcare tech is still tech. It's still about, you know, that basic, like what is that cut through message?
Yes.
Um
So in technology, so much of it revolves around uh, bells and whistles. But it's
yeah.
interesting you bring up healthcare because yesterday I had to go to the hospital with my youngest daughter because she
Mm.
was booked in for an operation.
Oh yes.
And I mean, I don't want to use the term friction, but it's the easiest term to use. I was surprised, how low tech everything is in terms of getting, the patient in to
Mm-hmm.
the operating room. And, there was a bucket of clean pens on the counter, and the person behind the counter went to great pains to tell me not to mix the clean pens with the used pens. And I had 3 or 4 forms to fill out by hand and then, check boxes and sign them. But the thing is, the week before, I'd already filled out forms online as well. And I'm wondering if it really made any difference, whether that was just checking a box. So, healthcare, I mean, from a customer point of view or patient point of view, not really looking for bells and whistles because you just assume if you've got a good doctor, a good surgeon, they're going to
Mm.
have all the right tools in the operating theatre. You're really looking at a an easy process because it's stressful to go to the hospital and
Yeah.
all the unknowns. So yeah, it's just the most basic stuff. And so why am I creating an account online and filling out things online for the hospital when I still have to fill out all these forms when I get there? It's
Well,
confusing.
exactly. And that's exactly kind of when you don't need it and you're not in front of the healthcare system, you don't think about these things. But
Mm.
I've just recently had, it's more of, you know, it was more dental surgery, but a similar thing, lots of paper based, lots of phone calls, which yeah, you can see the crux of the problem there. So well not yeah, the challenge being there's still so much hand holding in the healthcare system. But anyway.
But having said that, this morning I received a text message from the
Mhm.
anaesthetist who was checking in with me, who wanted to know how my daughter was going. And that's such a basic thing. We can message anyone, but
Mm,
it didn't require an app because the messaging is already part of your phone,
mm-hmm.
whether it's Android or
Yeah.
Apple. And just that human experience of someone reaching out to me going, "Hi, Tim, how's your daughter going? Is there anything I can do to help?" I mean, that's the sort of experience people want, not just in healthcare, but anything, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. It's that, can AI ever replace the human element? And in some ways, as humans, we don't want to be, you know, it takes away, like AI can help us move through some of the mundane tasks because we want to do something more valuable with our time. But then do the mundane tasks, like, are they like the basic things that make you better at doing the things that you want to put more time and value into? So the whole argument around, for example, in content, if everything looks the same because a particular AI tool is helping you to create it, then how do we begin to elevate above that, like above that sort of very what people would describe as mediocre content and noise? And then if people aren't, then if that's all AI created and the person, let's say like a junior a junior person is using AI, they're not actually even really creating anything. So how do they become better at the craft? So it's a whole big can of worms, Tim.
It is a can of worms. Something that has disappointed me a bit about this discussion is it's very polarized. So,
Mm.
you see a lot of posts, particularly on LinkedIn, where it's like, AI won't replace you, but someone using AI will replace you. Make sure you use these 5 free AI tools to like crush 2024 and improve your workflow. So there's that, which is very much the pro side, and there's a lot of hype. But then the extreme, the polar opposite, and a lot of smart people are putting forward this message as well, but I'm not resonating with the opposite message. And the opposite message is, I don't see the use of any of these tools. I'm not able to get anything useful out of them.
I think I
Think
know.
it's think
I know
it's
the exact post.
overhyped. Why can't we just like build better spreadsheets? And those posts get a lot of engagement, but I think that's dissatisfying because in the last 7 days, I actually tried out 2 AI tools that made a massive difference to my work.
Mhm.
And neither of those 2 tools were tools that created content for me, but they actually freed me up to do other things.
Right.
So one of them I had to, I ghost wrote a post for an executive and I had to use a particular image to go with that LinkedIn post. And it had to be that image. It couldn't be any other image. But the problem is the image I had
Mm.
was only 300 pixels wide,
Oh,
which is too, that's a thumbnail.
yeah, yeah,
It's too small for a post. And if I blew that up in Photoshop, it
yeah.
just would have gone soft and grainy. But I found all these free AI image resizing tools, and
Mm.
it will actually intelligently rebuild the image, resize it. I
Wow.
blew it up from 300 pixels to 1200 pixels, which was enough for the post. And only the most trained eye would have been able to pick that there was
A bit
some
of
trickery going on, but it was like magic. And so that's an example of something I just couldn't do on my own because I didn't have the tool. But now AI
mm.
solved that particular problem because sometimes you just have a cruddy image and you don't have access to the high res one. And then the second tool I used was, I think it's called Copy AI.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And rather than have a generative prompt window, say, write me something, you can build a workflow. I think it's like Zapier, do this, then do that, then do that. And what I told that tool to do is there were 2 industry specific websites that always have a lot of news stories on them. And I
Mm-hmm.
just simply do not have the time to read
Mm.
all the stories, but there's good content ideas in there because they're relevant to the industries of the executives I
Mm-hmm.
write for. So I told this AI tool
To read
is
them.
every week you go 3 or 4 pages deep into
Mm-hmm.
each site every week, and then find what you think are the most interesting stories. Write a 1 sentence summary of each story, and then every Tuesday morning, email me the links in an email. And so every Tuesday now, this AI bot sends me, it's like aggregated news stories, but it's
Yeah.
not just a link and a headline. It actually tells me what each story is about. And then I just comb through the email. So rather than Cat
Wow.
emailing me, the Copy AI is emailing me. And I go, oh, yeah, that story's relevant to the client. Maybe that story is as well. And so it hasn't written final content for me, but I've now taken that cognitive load off myself of like
Yes.
combing through all this information.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. The cognitive load, definitely. And that sounds amazing that it's emailing you.
Yeah, so that's the last step in the flow. Then, email me, and there's all sorts of other things you can do. Like there was an example flow of like writing a LinkedIn post every single day, but I wasn't ready to go that far. But the point is those two examples, like turning a poor quality image into a high quality image and then finding ideas, that's in between those two extremes. You're not saying AI is going to do everything and you no longer have to come up with ideas or create things, but
Yeah.
you're not saying it's useless either. So there's a whole like spectrum of possibilities between those two extremes. And I just feel that even like some of the smarter people in our respective industries have sort of fallen into a trap
Hmm.
of saying, yes, it'll do everything, or saying, no, it's completely useless. I don't think that's a sophisticated position to take.
Yeah. And there's also the argument that if you're not getting the value out of the AI tool, a lot
Mm,
of it is about how you input and prompt it to. So
yes.
if you expect this tool to understand exactly your line, like it's like going to a writer with no brief. Can you write me this? It's got no context. So it's just that lazy, oh, like, yeah, I've really tried to make it work for me, but have you actually spent like half a day to really get that flow right? To really, okay, if this was me, read this context first, and then, because I've been playing around with GPTs and I really enjoy it. And for me, it exactly, especially in marketing, and not even just in marketing, I'm sure it's in other industries, but when you're expected to do so, your output is so much, you're expected to do, deliver on so many different components. It definitely can make you move faster by removing that cognitive, what did you call it? Cognitive load, and that,
Yeah.
blank page, like just getting that piece out of your head onto that blank page. For me, that's been a huge benefit. So, and I enjoy it. I find it easier to train a GPT than I would a junior. So it's I'm practicing my managing style via GPT.
Yeah. That's interesting because we're really projected a lot on these tools. Like, it's either like the second coming or it's not that good at all. I think what's happening is it's revealing the gaps in either our
Mhm.
management style or even the way we think. Because as you say, you want a writer, a human, not a
Mhm.
GPT to create something for you.
Mhm.
You need to give them a thorough brief.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so,
Um,
and so if we don't have that discipline with a human, why do we expect like a machine to read our mind?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there's the gap, I think. But I'm sure we'll probably, in 12 months' time. I mean, when did ChatGPT, was it November 2022?
Yes.
And yeah, I don't know what it'll look like in a year's time, but maybe it'll be something else that we'll be talking about. But yeah, I do think it does have a huge potential outside of, the fad, or the very basic things it can do. I see that if the right imagination and creativity, and I guess even like empathy and compassion towards, like investing the time into training something, it could actually benefit us. But obviously, conversely, it could be trained to do the exact opposite. So it's an interesting time. But again, it's the basics, right? We've just said, how can you expect an AI to output great quality if you're not willing to train it and give it the right prompts and give it the right context? It's still the same basic issue that we see in teams, big, whether it's a startup or, well, that's probably a lot easier to control in a startup environment, but or even in big enterprises. It's really that interaction within the organization that makes or breaks the outcome of whatever you're working on. So that, again, just bringing it back to basics. you're not going to fix a very foundational tool or tool problem of, say, for example, someone who is not managing multiple departments, or like a head of communications or something, not managing the way that the teams work together. An AI tool can't fix that.
No, that's right.
So, or any sales team that's not performing because, you know, two territory directors don't get along. Like an AI tool can't fix that. So it's just really about going back to basics and understanding who your audience is and whatever it might be, in whatever vertical you're in, that very basic, like, what are we doing this for and who is it for? And if you can't verbalize that or elevator pitch that really clearly and concisely, where people actually receive it and go, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about, then that's really the foundational problem.
Yeah, I see a massive opportunity, though, of those challenges you're talking about, using these generative tools to overcome some of those challenges, because
Mm-hmm.
the larger an organization, the more siloed it tends to get. But within that organization, there are, you could call them domain experts, which is a fancy way of saying subject matter experts, which is a fancy way of
I'm
saying,
going to write that down. Domain expert.
really smart people. But a lot of that knowledge is hidden. It might be locked away in a silo, not because no one wants to share what they know. It's just there's no mechanism to jailbreak that knowledge. So if organizations started adopting some of these tools just to improve, let's say you're working in communications or marketing and you want to know, well, what's our position on XYZ, you could actually quiz the AI tool, which is unique to your organization. It's not
Mm-hmm. The
accessing
public.
the web.
Yeah.
It's on an intranet, and then you could find out all this stuff about the company you're working for, that even though you do work for them, you didn't know. And I feel that could help marketing and messaging as well, because there could be some unique value proposition everyone is
Right.
sitting on, but no one has acknowledged it, or it only exists in one silo.
Yeah. So see, this is where the whole argument around data, you know, data being the new gold. I mean, we've heard all of that kind of stuff before. But the thing is, what AI can allow us to do is to actually do something with that data quicker and in more meaningful ways. And just the way that we can so easily prompt an AI tool to take that, for example, if it was a closed tool of internal data, to like look at, and like, I haven't used Copilot myself, so I'm kind of like just assuming this is how it works. But imagine if that Copilot was on every work laptop and could then obviously pick up every single presentation attached to a particular meeting, for example, and then it can pick up, like, the follow-up response from that. Like, say for example, you're working at an agency and you've pitched this deck, you've emailed this copy of the deck following the presentation, and then it picks up like all of the different feedback that you're getting from the clients, and then it can actually put a report together, on the elements of the presentations that were really successful and got really great feedback, and then take out the elements that really worked well, and then conversely do the other end. And then as a team, you all come together and take that feedback and then use your own internal creativity and whatever you do together as a team to create that magic to sort of elevate whatever you're producing in pitches, as an example. So yeah, that's a really interesting point. I hadn't thought of that before. You've obviously either heard of it, or that's an amazing use case.
Yeah, I think there's a pressing need. Like, so for instance, so this morning I met with a client and we were discussing one of their LinkedIn posts, and he said, Tim, why was this post so successful? Because it had a lot of click-throughs and it also had high reach. And so then, based on what I know up till now, I was deconstructing the post with him and explaining all the elements of it that contributed to its success. But that's valuable information for other writers I might work with on other projects, and that's sitting in a recording. But
Mm,
if there was some way for an AI tool to gather all those transcripts and look for clues, oh, the client was happy in this meeting, what
mm.
happened in this meeting, I think that would be really valuable. I mean, it's funny you say data. Was it data is gold? People were
Data
saying
is
data's
the new
oil or
Data
something.
is the new oil or something like that. It's the new commodity or whatever. Data is the new oil. It could have been that one.
Yeah. But like oil, it's extracted and it's refined into petroleum or what other products. The
Exactly.
thing with the data, though, just because you've got data, there is really no value in it unless
Unless you.
you can pull some sort of
Hmm.
learning or insight out of. And now we've just got so much data. And I read something the other day that like organizations, like half the data they sit on, they can't use it because A, they can't access it, or
Exactly.
B,
It's
they don't know
also
what's there.
interoperability,
Yeah.
like how data is collected in one way and another way don't match, even though in reality they should integrate somehow or exactly. And if you go back to like the basics of everyday data, back to self-awareness, like if you were just really aware of what you did every day, you could think at the end of the week, oh, this is how I could optimize my time by doing XYZ. This activity is taking me way too much time. What can I do about it? But unless you take the time to reflect and be self-aware, you've got data at your fingertips everywhere you go. Unless you take the opportunity to invest that time into doing something about it, it's just sitting there.
Yeah.
Back to basics.
One of my goals this year is to actually get better at that, even if the data isn't being presented to me by some fancy AI tool, which is great. I'm all for that. But even if it's just things, even if it's 12 to 24 months of data sitting in a spreadsheet,
Mm-hmm.
it's just getting better at like being aware of what I think the data is actually trying to tell me, because there's nothing worse than like grinding out hours and hours of work just because you've got to get through lots of tasks. But if it's not being informed by your experience to date or your wins or losses, work just becomes busy work rather than
Mm-hmm.
effective work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in my role at the moment, being part of a very small team, and I'll be the marketing department. It's always, I've actually found that I've had to do that myself because obviously having worked in content for so long, it becomes okay, I'm going to do X amount of posts, blah, blah, blah. But actually I need to look at what the KPIs of not only my role, but what will move the dial for the company. And it's like, actually it's campaigns, but it's like, okay, but then if it is campaigns and we've just got this, brand new system that we've just CRM or automation system that we've just integrated, how do we then so obviously the knee-jerk reaction would be like, yeah, let's turn on the campaigns. But I also want the right back-end automations and nurture sequences, etc., turned on properly in order for us to ensure that we're getting our return on investment on the paid campaigns, right? And also on implementing this new software. So yeah, it's just that awareness of like looking at like, and I'm a very visual person, so I kind of need to write it down and like see it in the corner of my laptop, but understanding what are the three key things that are really going to move the dial, because you can't focus on 10. 3 is literally like your maximum. And um I heard that from a very experienced CTO as well. Like 3 is like, there's the power of 3 in messaging, right? And that's just your capacity of what you're going to learn, and everything after the 3 makes, they're just like weaker variations of the top 3 points that you present anyway. So that's, for me, has been a really great eye-opener when looking at, you can be very busy all the time, but having that awareness of what are the three key things that need to work together to be that real growth engine of like what you're actually trying to achieve. So that's been a huge learning in the last the last 4 weeks of actually being on the roll, not including the breaks in between with Christmas and New Year's. So that's been really good.
Yeah, mentioning the CRM, like some of these CRMs, they're so vast and capable in terms of their features, but
Yes.
I mean, the challenge for anyone is if you acquire a new tool, is to get the best out of it as well.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you've
absolutely.
got this really fast car that just sits in the garage.
Absolutely. It's just that, I mean, and it's the same argument that you could apply to an AI tool. If you don't know how to use it correctly or use it in context or give it context, it's the same thing, that it's a wasted Ferrari in the garage. So yeah, it's about, you have to move fast. Everything moves fast, but you also have to be very what's the word? Calculated and really self-aware about what is actually moving the dial, because it's just too easy to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this, because sometimes it does seem easier to be like, I can build out a whole content calendar for the next 3 months, which I did, but is that it is part of the growth engine, but also how else can I split my time more effectively, so that kind of comes up like fourth out of the top 3 things I need to do. Yeah, so the context switch for myself, working in marketing still, but having a larger breadth has been really, really good. I actually didn't realize how much I'd missed that challenge of variety of like, and being closer to the problem, I think is quite good. Being closer, going on ride-alongs with the sales team, like actually meeting, potential leads and listening to how after, they've seen this campaign, or after they've Googled, Googled our product or whatever, however they found us, how that actually results in a conversation. That's been, I think, something that I've been missing working in agency land for so long, because you just get the brief.
Yeah, you feel one step removed. I mean, marketing as a profession tends to get a bad rap, but based on what you're saying, people who are passionate about their job, such as yourself, actually do want to feel or see evidence that what they're doing is making some kind of difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And particularly, when you're dealing with an audience that healthcare professionals, as an example, being in the field I'm in, you kind of, there are a lot of stereotypes, and I probably know a few nurses, but it's quite a different way of, again, the messaging and positioning is very different to like sort of the enterprise brands that I've been working for. It's just you just got to you got to cut out the fluff of it and really get to the crux really quickly, because no one has time, but they definitely don't have time, and they have a lot of red tape to go through to even sometimes invest in things that they want, that they know will improve patient outcomes, but it's such a bureaucratic space that it takes a lot to change it, as we can see. Obviously the healthcare across in Australia and other developed countries are in dire straits because of that, because of all the bureaucracy around the healthcare system. So yeah, it's just that, again, just understanding the audience is really important, and to be able to have that face to face has been big. So it goes to show again that that real people interaction, that personal interaction, how important it is, regardless of the tools that you have. You just really need to keep that as part of your role in whatever you do, that research element, real life element. Yeah.
I read that terrible story from Queensland the other day about all the ambulances banking up outside one of the hospitals, and the
Mm,
patients in the ambulances weren't able to get into emergency quick enough because it was literally a traffic jam of ambulances. And the bottleneck
yeah.
was there, and someone unfortunately passed away
Oh,
because
wow.
they didn't get from the ambulance to emergency. But
Wow. Yeah. I try not to. I still try and stay away from the news, but I also, one of my colleagues was saying, and this is going deep on, a completely different topic than we would normally talk about, but the way that the Medicare, how difficult it can be to find like a bulk billing doctor
mm,
in certain, I live in North Shore, so it is quite hard to find a bulk billing doctor in my area, but that's actually putting a lot of pressure on the emergency department, because people are like, well, I can't afford to go see a GP. I have to go see someone about this. And it's clogging up the emergency system of people who should be going to see a GP but can't because they can't afford it. So it's like, oh wow, I hadn't even thought about that kind of impact before. But she said, yeah, well, when people are, the cost of living is way up and people are struggling, that's then they need to see somebody about their health. They're gonna go to the ED because they don't have any other choice.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, there's been an attempt to try and alleviate that. Uh, I've seen a couple of instances of it's not the hospital and it's not the GP. It's like an emergency center you go to, which bulk bills. So
Mm.
if you're chopping eggplant and you slice the end of your
Yeah.
finger off,
Yeah.
you could
And
go
go
there
there.
instead of the emergency room. But
Ah.
I don't know how many of those are across our state at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. I haven't even heard of that. So there you go. So there's, in terms of a professional, when you start seeing, you know, maybe more real life scenarios or problems and the solutions needed in that space, that's actually really helped to I guess put everything into perspective, and then again look at content in such a different way, because you're like, okay, well, that's great and that works for that, but how do we then bring it back to how I can um, help my company achieve what they're looking to do with their software, and how does that relate to my audience? So that's been a really great growing process.
Yeah. So do you find now that you're working for a company that is in such a clearly defined vertical, it's easier to think about the relevance of your content marketing because you're not trying to
Yes,
be
and
everything to everyone?
they've been very good in not being everything to everyone in their software solution, but because of what I mentioned before in terms of the red tape and the processes internally, and let's say, for example, public health systems, it's still very much understanding what from their digital and technology leadership teams or projects, or it's understanding their problems. So I mean, there's some things that I've been exposed to where I kind of would understand what they're looking for, but it's having that variety. It's B2B at the end of the day still. So it's
Mm.
having that variety of messaging that will influence the buying committee or whoever's part of the purchasing decision. So yeah, definitely from a content marketing perspective, it's you have to just be able to shift the angle a little bit, so that you're actually talking about what that particular person cares about. Yeah, so um, it hasn't gotten simpler. It's the same, but you have to just apply it to different stakeholders and different personas within that process. So it's not one customer, it's like 5 customers for the one journey.
So
um
what do you think of this opinion that I've seen around that
mhm.
B2B marketing is just boring?
It's boring because it doesn't move fast, I think.
Right.
But I actually, it's and this is why so many influencers do so well in this space when you actually invest the time to what's her name? Her name's Jade, and she actually, I can't remember her last name, but she's just started her own little B2B sort of marketing education program, and she kicked off on TikTok and then obviously use that same content on LinkedIn. And she's been really good because because I guess of the way she's been very authentic about the experience. Basically, we want you to create 10 million in revenue with like $10,000 of marketing budget, which is, you laugh, but there's probably quite a few instances where, that sort of ratio of expectation for revenue is based on a very small marketing budget. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to just be like, expectation versus reality, and the scope of having to talk to so many people in the one sales process. It's actually really interesting, but maybe that's just me. I don't know. What do you think about B2B?
I think most of it is terribly boring, but having said that, when you do see something interesting in the B2B marketing space, you notice it a lot more
Mm,
because it stands out. Yeah, it's interesting you're talking about turning $10,000 into $10 million. Earlier, you were saying you can only really focus on 3 things rather than 10
mm,
things. I wonder if the direction to take with such a small budget, with the expectation on an outsized outcome, is to like only focus on 1 or 2 areas, like maybe
yeah,
focus on one platform, as long as your customers are on that platform.
yeah,
Yeah.
agreed. But the expectation in marketing is that, oh, why haven't you written a press release, or why haven't you done XYZ? Because it's become so tactically focused that we're so used to, as marketers, being like, oh yeah, just doing all of the things that form marketing activities, that it's actually, and that's the understanding within, everyone's and I've experienced this in, enterprise businesses. Everyone's a marketer. They've all got ideas to like, let's do this and that, but again, at the end of the day, no one's bringing it back to basics. They're just looking at like that shiny new activity or that shiny new platform or that whatever it might be, and they're getting really distracted from what is actually makes the company money or what actually resonates with their audience. So I think that's just human behavior, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's part of the cynicism I mentioned earlier towards AI, and people are getting turned off on because a lot of large companies that are marketing to enterprises, they're suddenly all about AI, but they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, because on the one hand, they're saying we've always been about AI, but
Mm,
it was really the recent iteration of ChatGPT, November 22, that brought it to everyone's attention because suddenly people could use it. I mean, if I wanted
exactly.
to use AI in my workflow before then, very, very difficult for me, but now
Yeah.
it's accessible. But at the same time, it's revealed the gaps in everyone's strategy and posture, because they're like, oh, yeah, we've always been about AI. But like, have you?
uh, um, so taking all of, I guess, all of last year's experience, and you and I have been wanting to do this podcast for months, and
Yeah, why do we want to do this podcast, by the
well,
way?
exactly, that's what I was saying. I was like, thinking about our conversation today, it's like, well, what is it that we're offering the people who listen to us? So for us, it's obviously a creative outlet. Like, I mean, our conversations, we should have recorded our previous conversations as sort of starters or teasers or something like that, because um, that's kind of where this inspiration came from. But it's like, well, and we've probably said it quite a few times. It's like, it's about like personally, if anyone were to listen to our conversation, I think the one thing that I would want people to take away from is to really be really self-aware, and be hyper and take that self-awareness to be hyper targeted on what the actual foundation and basics are of whatever you're doing, whether it's your personal life. If you're not happy about something, you really have to take the time to sit down and understand what it is that you're not, what's not making you happy. Is it the fact that you're, you know, you need to drill down into what that is. And then, and it's just to be, and then to take, you know, those insights and that investment in time to be focused, and then to like create a workable action plan that really focuses on the things that are going to improve your life, first of all, your personal, you know, because health is wealth, everything like that. And then what's going to help you become the best, you know, professional in your role, what's going to help you achieve the goals that are your remit. So those are probably the three things I would say out of all of the things that we've talked about and expressing our opinion. That's what I would want someone listening to this podcast to take away from this session, particularly.
Yeah, so we're going to call this show Fix Your Feed, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the feed is more than what just appears on your phone. It's your center of attention, really. That's like
Mm-hmm.
a metaphor, isn't it? Like,
Absolutely.
what are you scrolling through? Are you scrolling your life away?
And we definitely are.
If you are going to scroll your life away, make sure Kat and Tim appear somewhere in there.
A part of it, because we've made the mistakes that you don't have to make, or you know, you probably will make again, but then you'll be like, oh, then we can have that I told you so moment, which I love to have. The ego side of me loves to have that I told you so moment.
Yeah, I'm glad you framed it that way. I mean, it's really low expectations for our conversations, isn't it? To like help everyone lead a better life, no pressure at all. But but no matter what your role, there's always aspects of it that you dislike, but there's
Yeah,
other aspects that you possibly do like. So why not lean harder into the things you really like?
yeah, that's true too. And sometimes, do you, do you find you're really good at things you don't like? Does that even exist? Do you think that's even a
I
conundrum
think
that
that's a
people have?
fantastic question because there are things each week that I do, and when I get out of bed, I'm like, I really do not feel like having this meeting, or I'm unsure what to talk about this. I'm unsure what to discuss with this client. But I find when I'm on the other side of it and I look back, it's like, oh, that was actually much better than I expected. And so
Mm,
I haven't answered the question, are there things I don't like that I'm good at?
yeah, maybe that's it. I think you just need to.
I'll have to sit on that. I mean, one of the biggest influences of the last few years, I remember when we started working together, and you probably don't remember this, but you were putting together a report and you were looking at the data from all these posts you wrote for an executive. And then you had this eureka moment and you're like, oh, every time I share an infographic for this client, you know, reach and engagement explodes. And that was a light bulb moment for me because I could see that you were going to such a granular level of looking at it. And that sort of influenced me from that point on. And I was always looking for that story to share with a
Mm.
client. So yeah, and I do enjoy that aspect of my job, and I guess I'm crediting that to you
Oh,
because
thank
you
you.
sort of shone a light on the path, which way to go from there.
Yeah. Well, if we're going down that path, I think you've always seen me question myself in situations, and goes back to the point of like, what do you know, are the things that you don't like that you're actually good at? And it's actually very similar. And I think it's because um I'm actually naturally quite an introverted person, although it might not have seemed that way. So again, when you think about the meetings and meeting with clients and things like that, there is that level of discomfort that comes with that. Um, but once you kind of run through that process of having that meeting, I think for me, what helps is like, if that client, and even for myself, like, how do I give value to this time? And I think that's in our the discussions, the way that you framed, I don't know, problems that I've come to you with has really helped me to bring it back down to that basic level. Okay, well, what's going to bring value to this discussion? So yeah, so definitely that's probably why we have, although on the outside we probably seem like very different people, there's probably that common thread of just like being that introverted, kind of like always questioning things internally. But then I guess how we've been able to bring that out in work life has eventuated differently, but like we still at the end of the day want to achieve the same thing, which is like bringing value to like the things that we're spending our time on and to that particular client, as an example, or for whoever we're working for. So I think that's the common thread between us and what brings us together in this conversation.
Agreed. That's a great way to put it. One thing I like to remind myself of is if, you're meeting with an executive or a
Mm.
marketing team from the client, their calendars are just filled with so many meetings. And you might be like meeting 12 of 18 that week. And so like what is it about that experience they're going to have with you that's going to make them remember it?
Mm. Yeah.
I'm making it sound like we're entertainers. Like, I
In some
guess,
ways you are, though,
yeah,
because you are not entertaining in a sense of, it's like, well, why are we like, if I was on that, client side team, like, why are we meeting with these guys again? That's the conversation. Who are these guys? What's this time for? How can we make it shorter? And do we still need the meeting? So they're having that conversation in the background. So yeah, definitely being really aware of like all of those things, and what you choose to focus on in the discussions.
yeah, it's like if you're invited to someone's house for a dinner party, I mean, you bring something, don't you? A bottle of wine or something, some kind of gift. So I think it's the same with meetings. Like,
Mm.
it has to be an exchange of value. Like, even if uh, the activity the client has engaged you to do, even if it's a low month, like don't shy away from it. Just like, let's unpack it.
Mm.
How can we turn it around? What's worked in the past? What can we do to refine our message? So yeah,
And if it doesn't work, I mean, if it's worked in the past and it doesn't work now, why? It's just
yeah,
asking the question. And I I think being in an agency and being hired for expertise, I think you're expected to come with the answer. But I think when you are, again, so far removed from the initial challenge and you don't have the full context, I think if you run it as a discussion where it's like a, two-way, as opposed to like providing the solve all, which you will never have, which will never be, because you don't have the full context, then it helps with that relationship building as well. So I've always tried to come with that. And I think coming into my career, after having that little bit of a maternity break, I'm actually much more comfortable now saying, what, I don't know. But these are the questions I have. Like, what are you thinking about that? Or what do you feel about these questions? Just getting really comfortable about saying, I really don't know. I can't give you an answer without taking the time to really, again, as you say, unpack it.
yeah. This is something else I'm working on is, I mean, I don't struggle in presenting myself that way, saying I don't have the answer now, but I'll find it out. But there's this inclination to present yourself as like an expert that knows everything. And I just think the higher you get up in the food chain, talking to clients and executives, they just find it refreshing when someone is open about what they don't, they do or
Mm,
don't know. Because
mm,
it's like, well, you're actually not wasting my time. You're not winding me up. You're giving me your opinion based on your experience to date, but you're not.
saying
You're not
Yep.
pretending you have all the answers.
Do you think it's actually, I actually feel like working in social media, for whatever reason, no matter what aspect of whether you're a community manager or you're the social media manager, people literally just expect you to be an expert in every single platform.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if
it's
there's any other vertical that's like that, where if you're like a finance manager, that maybe that's not a good example, but do you know what I mean? Like there's
yeah.
so many different facets in social media, but just because you have a title that says social media in it, you're expected to be an expert in all aspects of social media.
Yeah, and that just leads to burnout and resentment because I think what's going on there is like a lot of things are priced too low, and then to, you know, win over clients, some agencies might say, yeah, we'll tweet for you. Well, it's not tweet, we'll X for you, we'll TikTok for you, we'll LinkedIn for you. All these are verbs now. Have you LinkedIn? We'll gram for you, we'll Instagram for you.
We'll do it for the gram.
But going back to what you're saying, yeah, we'll Reddit for you. Have I missed one? There's probably another one.
Pinterest. We'll pin it for you.
We'll pin it for you. We'll pretend a Mastodon for you. That doesn't sound very good, does it? Yeah. So, but what you're saying is, you know, focusing on 2 to 3 things, you can't master all those platforms. I mean,
No,
if you
but
had a team of people that were like masters of like one or two of each, yeah, but and it's like, well, where's your audience? Maybe your audience is on X, so you focus on that.
yeah, no, 100%. But it's like that same attitude towards AI.
Mm.
It's like, oh, this tool, oh, this social media manager can just do it all for me because that person is just suddenly, because of that specific title, is must know all of the things about social media. Like it's so yeah, it really just goes back to how we approach the
Mm.
shiny new things and that gap. So it
Yes.
just applies in so many different, it's just humans. I love humans, but
I
we
love
also
humans
have
too. I've really warmed up to humans because
yeah.
I've realized I am one too. So,
With all that pitfalls. Yeah, no, it's really good. So yeah, I don't know whether we should do an intro or we talk about an intro. I mean, we've kind of talked about out of all of these ramblings, what would be the key takeaways, but maybe that just comes out as we talk. How we
yeah, I
met.
could I could actually use the old editing tool to grab a snippet and put the snippet at the front, and then we go into
Yeah,
the whole
yeah, of
thing.
course.
Yeah,
I mean, because how did we meet? We met, oh my gosh, it's
I
7, it's almost, it's 8
well,
years this year.
I was brought in to check typos on content, I think. I was
Were
working on
you?
another project, and
Oh yeah, I remember I spelled Singapore wrong. It was the
oh,
biggest
how did
thing.
you spell Singapore?
I think I accidentally put an extra R in or something. but
Oh,
the thing
that's
is,
the other Singapore.
the thing is, the client was so annoyed because she didn't see it either. So
Oh,
she was
okay.
even doubly annoyed because it actually went out and she supposedly approved it. So maybe that was what brought you on.
Yeah, that's interesting because I don't want to promote the idea that you should publish things with typos, but at the same time, if something's not coming from, you know, a polished brand handle and an
Exactly. It's
individual, if there's a typo, but you know what they're sharing as a value or it's highly engaging, the typo's not going to
yeah, I
harm
guess
the
it
post.
maybe it depends on your audience though, because maybe it'd be all the responses or replies you'll ever get is like, hey, there's a typo in the first sentence. And people don't, do you know what I mean? Like if you come
Yes,
from a really pretentious, like let's say your peers or I don't know, marketing professors or something like that, and they're
sure.
just super pretentious. But
Yeah, but that's how we met because of the Singapore with two R's.
yeah, Oh, great. And I think I was so relieved that you had come on board, because that was but anyway, we had some really great times in that really early iteration of this program that had no context to it, had never been run where we worked before. And we were kind of just like working everything out as it went, including
Yeah.
the reporting, which I'm sure has changed a bunch since we first started. But
Yes.
that was really exciting. I've actually found that that is a recurring theme in my career, coming into something that's never been like, that's got no, context to how things should be run. It's like completely like built from the ground up. So I don't know if that what that says about me, but that's definitely a recurring
So do
theme.
you find that anxiety inducing coming into something where you don't know exactly
Actually,
either
no,
how to
it's
start or what to do next?
no, no, not anymore. Well, actually, it never really did, to be honest. No, sorry, I lie. It did give me a lot of anxiety and stress initially in certain projects, but not really now. Just because I've been through it so much, and it just must be something like, for example, even just, yeah, where I am now, just setting up, doing the systems integration, and setting up a new CRM tool. Like,
Mm.
what? It's just like, what? Oh, it's like, it's really cool because I'm there at the beginning to catch, how things should be set up properly, because I've also come into, the ugliest Salesforce instance ever, like, which is basically all of them. And to be able to be there as part of the process of starting it is really great. But yeah, I don't know what it is, but everywhere a lot of my professional experience has been in just like, hey, we want to do this thing, but we don't know how to do it. How do we do it? It's like, uh, I don't have the answer, but I'll try and make one up.
Sure. So you're calling on a pattern of thought, or maybe not even a pattern, a way of thinking about problems in order to tackle new problems.
I guess so. Or like
Yeah.
even defining it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what's all right, you want to do this thing, but what's the real problem? Oh, okay, well, that actually doesn't work. Or we need to do XYZ to really make it meaningful for XYZ. Um, and I've seen that in even in, I've picked that up in what people are doing in other teams where I've worked. I'm like, okay, so they want this outcome. Why are we doing this? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Um, so yeah, maybe it's the fact that I can question things a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
You're
it.
curious. You have a curious nature.
Question existence. Why, Tim? Why?
Yeah,
What is the meaning?
I become slightly alarmed when I do encounter people that don't question anything, even if they don't question me, because I mean that's how I discover new things. It's like, why does this work? Or why didn't this work? Or, how can I get this piece of software to do that? And I mean, there's so much information out there. You've just got to look for it. And so I just think curious people are rewarded because they're always trying to build their effectiveness or get better at what they do.
Or it kills you because curiosity killed the cat.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's interesting because if all your peers aren't curious,
Well,
you're actually a problem.
no, that is true.
Yeah.
That is true. It's like, again, human nature. It's really hard to go against status quo.
Yeah.
Been there, done that. My whole life, my whole career path is like against the status quo. But anyways, I mean, it's good. It's fine. It's interesting.
So how long have we been talking for, Kat?
Almost an
Almost an
hour.
hour. That's
Hmm.
pretty good. Do you think that we've gone against the status quo in our conversation?
I think we've highlighted the status quo.
All right.
Yeah.